the biggest game of the college football season, arguably the biggest game of the college football season, the game we've been waiting for since the national championship last year, finally happened yesterday, and it was a very interesting game. A lot of things I want to talk about. Some, if you're from Texas, you may consider it a shit show. If you're from Ohio, you may consider it a miracle. But anyways, so again, enough talk. I just want to get into some of the things that I found interesting from this. What was it? 14-7? I believe 14-7 Ohio State win yesterday in the big. Okay, I almost said in the big house. In the shoe. So the first thing I wanted to get to was the Ohio State defense. So again, Ohio State was a team that lost 14 players to the NFL draft this year. A very questionable team coming into this year. People thought, are they going to live up to the hype? And now again, some people will argue for the legitimacy of this Texas defense and offense. Some people will say that this isn't really a defining win for. I don't think anybody will say that. That's a little ridiculous. But some people might think that Texas is a little bit overrated and this win isn't as impressive as some people view it as. I think it's still a great win. I also am an Ohio State fan, though, so I'm a little biased there. But yes, the Ohio State defense, incredibly impressive. Again, obviously Arch Manning, not his first start, but his first start as the true starter, the number one guy. Bunch of hype going into the season. Definitely seemed a little bit nervous going into this game, so I'm not too surprised about his performance. I'll get a little bit more into that later. But Ohio State's defense really impressed me today. I forget, who was it? Number 8 on Ohio. I forget his name. I should have done more research before I started recording this. But he was an absolute stud. He reminded me a lot of Lathan Ransom from last year. He was very good on the blitz, very aggressive, very quick-witted, has that that little superstar edge to him that I really liked. Ohio State defense looked great. Now this is going to lead me to my second point, specifically about Ohio State's new defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia. I think that Patricia, obviously, if you didn't know, he's a Bill Belichick disciple. He went on to coach for the Lions for 5 years. That was a shit show. But he returned back to his defensive coordinator roots this year with Ohio State, replacing Jim Knowles. And honestly, I think he looks really, really good. I was a little bit concerned about him, again, just because of how shitty his run was in the NFL. But also, granted, being an NFL head coach and being a college football defensive coordinator, it's two completely different things, obviously. But he looked very good. I think one of his big flaws, earlier in his career, was he wasn't very good at establishing interpersonal relationships with his players or connecting with his players, which is why I think partially he sucked as a head coach. But again, not just from what I saw yesterday, but also from what reports were saying in the offseason, he is a lot more interconnected. He's doing a lot better establishing interpersonal relationships with defensive players. He's a lot more likable coach. I think that's great for him. He's better connecting with his players, and I think overall that's going to benefit the Ohio State defense and the culture of Ohio State in general. But again, that's pretty much it for the Ohio State defense. Impressed me a ton. Great performance. Now, I guess the hot headline this morning was obviously about the Heisman favorite, which is insane for somebody who had only started 2 games coming into the season. But the Heisman favorite, Arch Manning, had a pretty disappointing game. I believe he was 17 for 30, 138 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. I believe that's what his stat line was. Should have written that down too. But again, he had a pretty disappointing game. I don't think it was abysmal. I think a lot of the negativity that's surrounding him right now is just a product of insane expectations. I don't believe that this is some tell-all tale for Arch Manning. I don't believe that this is indicative that he's going to be terrible across the season. I think his performance was just okay. I remember the first drive he had a really shitty throw. He had a few bad throws. He threw a pick. Again, it was also a pretty shitty throw. But again, in my personal opinion, I think that a lot of his performance can be summed up to just jitters, and you have to put this into perspective. Again, it's not his first start, it's his third, I believe. But again, the 2 starts that he made last year when Ewers was injured was against UL Monroe and some other bum team. I hope that it was a bum team. I hope it wasn't an important team, because now I look like an idiot. But anyways, again, this is his first start as the guy, going into the season where he's the Heisman favorite. He has all these expectations, all the weight of the world is on his shoulders, and to go into the shoe in Columbus and play the defending national champions, that's a tall ass task. And to be honest, I think it could have been a lot worse for him. I mean, again, like I said, I think he played worse than his stat line really indicates, because like 17 for 30, 138 yards, touchdown, interception. Don't get me wrong, that's not beautiful by any means, but it's not horrendous. Like that's not like something you'd be screaming at the rooftops about. But obviously for his expectations, for what he's expected to do this year, that's obviously not. It's pretty anticlimactic. But again, I think he'll be okay. I think a lot of this stuff is just overreaction. It's just because when you enter a season where everybody's expecting you to live up to basically be the next Joe Burrow, listen, people are going to be disappointed, and I think that's just a natural part of that amount of hype. Okay, but now on to the flip side. Ohio State's new quarterback, Julian Sayin, a lot more optimistic about him. I think his performance yesterday was really good. I think I said this before going into the season, but I think the key for Julian Sayin for this game was to play his role, right? Obviously, again, expectations when you're playing for a team playing for a university which has such the allure and the legacy of Ohio State. There's always going to be huge expectations, and especially Julian Sayin going into a team that has such beautiful stars around. You have Max Clare transferring from Purdue. You have Jeremiah Smith, the best player in the nation, in my opinion. You have Carnell Tate, also a study of Brandon Inniss. You have all the weapons around you, right? You have everything laid out on a silver platter for you. So it's easy to get ahead of yourself and try to make these big, crazy throws and blah, 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 all that. But I think what really stood out for me for Julian Sayin was that he played his role well. He didn't seem like he was too overwhelmed. It didn't seem like, again, I mean, he just seemed like a veteran, despite only being a redshirt sophomore, I believe. He felt well composed. He seemed like he was in control. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times when these guys make their first starts, you'll see the nervousness. You'll see the very the timidness. The fear, almost really the fear that's in their eyes. But I think Sayin seemed really calm. He seemed really relaxed. He seemed like he fit in the Ohio State offense, and he fit in that scheme, and he seemed very comfortable, really, like very comfortable in that scheme. And I thought it was very impressive. Again, he didn't do anything too crazy. He had that beautiful deep shot for a touchdown to Carnell Tate in the second or third quarter. That was beautiful. But again, and I think that's even more beautiful knowing the fact that he played smart the rest of the game. So seeing that he has the ability to play his role and go and be a team player and get the win and not be obsessed with the flashy highlights and just play and get the ball to his weapons and leave it up to them. But also being able to see those little flashes that he can't make those crazy plays, those insane Justin Fields or C.J. Stroud type throws. That's an awesome thing to see. And I think that Ohio State should be incredibly optimistic about him and how he's going to do this year, and assuming nobody else would take his starting position next year. But anyways, continuing on the Ohio State offense, now I'm going to be a little bit more pessimistic besides the glazing I've been doing this entire episode about Ohio State. But one weak point I did definitely notice about Ohio State was the run game. Last year, I mean, again, this is also subject of coming off of last year where you had arguably the best backfield, the best combined backfield, obviously. Not best running back, Ashton Jeanty existed last year, but the best combined backfield last year you had, TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, two NFL draft picks, day 2 draft. Actually, was Henderson? Yeah, it was day 2. But yeah, so you're piggybacking off of last year that had an insane running back duo. There's obviously going to be high expectations, but I do think that I was not so optimistic about how the run game looked for Ohio State yesterday. Again, obviously, granted, they were going against Texas that has a very good defense, also has Colin Simmons, one of the best defensive players in the country, on their D-line. So obviously, I will make room for a little bit of a margin for error there. But yeah, I just think there wasn't a lot of explosion. But I do actually, that's funny. I do kind of want to combine these 2 points I want to talk about. Now, a little bit of optimism sprinkled in. TJ Donaldson, number 12, the transfer from West Virginia this year. I do think he's going to be the guy. I was pretty sure, again, I'm not 100% sure. I wasn't in the locker room, but I think the plan for this year for Ohio State was to have James Peoples be the guy in the backfield. But I think after watching the game yesterday, I think it's definitely going to be C.J. Donaldson that's going to be that guy. I think he seemed like a real old school bruiser is, I guess, how I'd sum it up. I think I really enjoyed the way that he played. Just a very physical running back, a tough guy. I really think that he's going to be the number 1 guy going into the season. I'm excited to see how he does. But still, overall, the run game just was not there for Ohio State, and that's a little disappointing. But I think as the season goes on, they play obviously some weaker teams coming up, like Grambling in Ohio. they'll get it together, and I think that we'll see a definitely different look from the backfield than we did today. Okay, next up now. Also, speaking of disappointing performances, Jeremiah Smith, obviously a Heisman candidate, the best offensive player in the nation, absolute stud, generational talent, had a rough game. I believe he had 4 catches for 46 yards, but also that doesn't even tell the whole story, because if you saw the game, you saw he had 2 straight drops at the beginning of the drive. I believe it was on the first drive. It was what was it, third or fourth down. Ohio State went for it. Jeremiah Smith was wide open in the end zone, and Sayin didn't see him, and he threw to Max Clare on the side of the field, and it got knocked out for an incompletion, turnover on downs. Smith was obviously pissed. He was visibly pissed. So again, you could say there, he could have had a touchdown there, but still, overall on the stat sheet, again, 4 catches for 46 yards. Not an abysmal performance, but not what you want to see out of your Heisman hopeful. But again, like I said, I think it's just growing pains. I think he'll prosper this season. And again, Texas was a team that shut him down last year. If you guys remember, last year in the playoffs, he had that insane performance against Oregon that was like almost 200, or was it over? Like 200 yards receiving. One of the greatest performances in postseason history we've ever seen by a receiver. And then next week, Texas shut him down for one catch for like 3 yards. It was like insane. They shut his ass down. So again, Texas was a team. Maybe Texas is just his enigma. But yeah, so I guess that's a big shout out to this Texas secondary, because that was 2 games in a row against Ohio State. They have absolutely shut that man down. But again, I again, not something I'm too worried about. I don't think he fucking fell off. Obviously, just not something I'm too worried about. I think he'll work it out. I think he'll still. He was my pick to win the Heisman this year. But again, obviously, I'm biased. But yeah, I'm a little disappointing, but not too much to worry about. I guess in conclusion of this video, I wanted to just talk about Ohio State as a team, and I think what won them the game. Again, obviously, people fit into their roles, right? Running game slacked, but against Julian Sayin was composed. He didn't do anything dumb. He played smart. The weapons were weaponing, right? They were good. The defense was great. Matt Patricia had a really nice scheme going there, and I feel like in general Ohio State just felt more relaxed. Like I feel like if you go back and watch the highlights, you'll really notice that throughout the game, Ohio State just feels more in a groove. They feel like they know what they're doing, right? They have a, I guess, how do I describe it? They felt better suited. Okay, they didn't feel, Texas at times felt very out of order. They felt like they were all over the place, scrambled around. But again, Ohio State just felt it felt like business as usual. They felt like this team had been there before, despite having such a new roster with so many new young players. They just felt very, very comfortable, and that's a great signing. It's the number 1 team in the nation, first game of the year to feel. It's one thing it's one thing if your team looks like that week 8, right? But if it's week 1 against the number 1 team in the nation, I can't even describe how optimistic you have to be as Ohio State fan to see shit like that. To be well composed, to be ready, and okay. Anyways, let me stop there.